corrections. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing well. Tom, good to see you, brother.
Great to see you.
Doing all right?
Absolutely.
Good.
To observe.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I should know if there was something specific, that's why I was, okay.
Gosh, no. I could tell a funny joke, I guess.
That's it.
Nothing until.
Hi, how are you? Hey, Tom.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great.
First one here. Good to see you too. Oh, hey, Patrick. Good to see you, sit down.
Barry, how are you?
I'm good. Oh, you sound like you're not feeling well.
Can't get rid of these allergies.
Yeah. That's because the pollen will never go away.
They did. How are you?
Good. I busy today.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Hey Barry, how are you?
Good.
We'll be on one. Oh, yes.
Brian.
Yeah, hey, I'm Tom Walker. Yeah. I know you. We're friends. Yeah, good to see you.
They didn't really ask me for anything this evening, but I was just.
I have the stuff that we always use.
That's all I really need. They just ask questions about it.
Yeah, and I didn't know what they were.
They told me this week don't bring anything.
He'd give me a new, Social Security.
Oh, right.
I'll have it for you.
My emails keep coming back from them. I
problem.
Oh, really?
don't know why, after all these years.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had a problem.
Also,
Huh.
this.
I don't, actually, I had
Yes.
somebody else
I
tell me
do
that
that.
they had an email get
Over
kicked
here.
back
Okay.
from me, so I'm not really sure.
Okay.
It must
It's gonna
be
be
something
somewhere
on
around
there.
it.
Oh,
I
really?
appreciate it.
Okay. Or I'll have it. One of
Oh,
them.
I mean, I know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like I've sent you 100,000.
I know, well, I know,
Hey,
that's so weird.
hey there.
Hey,
How you doing?
Oh, not bad.
They,
Living the dream.
they said they're gonna hire.
Well, not very
Can actually read.
What you got up here, Lieutenant?
You know, tell a funny story. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you on the circumstances.
You're better than the others.
It's been too many of those circumstances.
What's up there, man?
Sorry.
Gee,
What's up, man?
What's up, boys?
Yeah.
hang in there.
Tired of traveling?
Man.
Hey, Barry.
How'd it go in Nicaragua?
Oh, yeah.
Got a passport.
Whoop, whoop, success.
I'm going back June 20th because I have a meeting at the U.S. Embassy on
Okay.
June 22nd.
Okay.
If they say yes, I can bring them. So that's the last
Then,
step.
or you have to,
I could bring them on July 9th.
on July 9th. So would you stay?
Yeah, I'm staying like 3 weeks.
You would just stay the whole time? Do you still have family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad has a
Well,
house there.
obviously, because you have him there. and-
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll show you. He was at my dad's house.
Oh, awesome. And I have a question for you. So we have been. Not bad.
He's all right. He's
That's
doing all right for
Yeah, he's
himself.
doing okay.
Yeah.
He's having all right time. We have had several undocumented kids
Mhm.
apply for college.
Rachel. That's good. That's all you can ask for.
So good.
Just a second, I just messed it up.
Pictures. Actually,
Is that a correct
agenda?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, and after finance,
Yeah,
Robert, I've got to ask you.
I created my own.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I created mine.
After finance, I need to ask you a question.
We gonna do questions on Monday? Is it Monday, question Monday?
This is
Anytime,
question
yes,
The
ma'am.
next committee meeting on May the 15th, Dr. Jones, Counselor Waltney, Counselor Allen,
Here?
Counselor Smith,
Here.
Counselor Harden.
Not here.
Okay, we have 4.
So you have a quorum though, 4 present.
4 present. We have a we have a meeting on May the 1st.
I would make a motion to approve those minutes as presented without reading.
Second.
Okay, moved by Counselor Smith, second by Counselor Allen. To dispense with the reading and approve them as distributed. Any questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. That is 4-0, passing. Approval of those. We're just gonna start at the top and move on down. We have several people here tonight. We're just gonna try to move through this as quickly as possible. Looking at old business, 2504-17, request for consideration of 18th Street revitalization project. My only question was about the lane opening, and let the record reflect that
They're
Councilor
waiting on
Harden
the.
is here.
I'm sorry. They're waiting on the yield signs, and as soon as they come in, they'll be able to open the lanes up.
Did they decide on an arrow or a green light?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I believe it's an arrow. I think.
The arrow?
I think it is.
Okay,
It
good.
looks like one. You're right,
Okay,
it is. I
perfect.
could be wrong.
We're close. We're close on that. So we'll carry that over, pending the yield signs and the arrow and opening that lane. It's been a long time coming. 050423, request to set bid date for City Hall parking deck repair and restoration. I talked to Mr. Pugh, and the consultant's still finishing up the bid package, so we're gonna carry that over one more time without objection. Hopefully we'll have all that by next meeting. We'll carry that over. Okay, going to new business, 010523, request to give mid-year review presentation per council fiscal policy. So we have, to me, it's all good news, and I'm gonna let Ms. Salter and Mr. Burgett kind of go over some highlights from the mid-year review. Overall, I think we're in great shape. We only have one item that is not tracking as well as we would like, but there's a reason for that. But I'm gonna let you go ahead with the report.
Okay, I'm gonna do the cash report and give a little analysis on that. I'm gonna let Melanie do the rest of it. She's done the lion's share of this, because as y'all know, I hadn't been up to speed here lately. So she was here this weekend working on it, and she put a lot of extra effort into it and helped me out tremendously. So I want to tell her I appreciate that very much, because without her, I don't know if it would have gotten done. On the cash report, the city's in a very good cash position. Our interest income is really good. Through 3/31 of the year to date, we've earned $292,885,000 in interest income, which that is 4 times what we earned all of last year, and we've still got half the year to go. But that's because the rise in interest rates, and we're taking advantage of that. Y'all gave us in January the authority to invest some money in treasury swaps, as well as some short-term treasury notes, which has been very productive for us. We're earning over 4% on all that money. We have basically half of the city's reserves invested in treasury notes, and that's 2 reasons. 1, because the yield is good, and 2, to protect that money from if there's any type of banking collapse or a local banking crisis that would occur. This money is held in treasuries in the city's name. It's not in any type of bank's name. We do have a small amount of money invested at Bryant Bank in short-term CDs, which that is held at Bryant Bank but it is also in the city's name. So the return has been good, the cash position is good. There is one thing to note, due to the bond money and some of the restrictions placed on the bond money, we had to do something with some of the older bond money that we still had on the books. And the best thing that we found to do with that, and we spoke with Gary Reed and also our, what was her name with the?
Katie Oxenmeyer.
Katie Oxenmeyer. And they suggested that we, fully spend some of this bond money, because it doesn't look good to hold bond money for extended periods of time. And due to the 18th Street East project being funded solely out of the Capital Project Fund, if you'll look down near the bottom, there's the warrant 17 refund of $107,000, which at 3/31 was still on our books. I'm sorry, so you come in. The 16 construction fund, which has 1.2 million still on the books, and then the public safety construction fund had $186,000. Well, that was a little over 1.5 million. So what we did with that money is we used it since 18th Street was a capital project, we took that 1.5 million and refunded our capital projects that amount of money. So our capital project balance has gone up by $1.5 million. And we're showing that the 18th Street East was a capital project for the city where we spent $1.5 million. So that gets us into compliance of completely liquidating prior year's
Okay, so
bond money.
We used all the bond money and we pumped the capital projects fund back up.
Yes,
by
ma'am.
Basically putting in the money that we spent.
1.5 million, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Now, we still have the 20 and the 21 bond money.
Right.
But this was the older, the 16 and the 17.
But are these
Why did we have extra bond money? What,
Sir,
money we never spent?
it's money that we did not spend or allocate to be spent. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that's when we took it, after they did our arbitrage report, every 5 years you have to do an arbitrage report and explain to them how and why you used how you use your money, how you allocated. So it was best for us to go back and this older bond money and get it spent and off the books.
So we move the money to capital, but then we also subtract, we're crediting it. Well, all this to say, is that in the capital projects fund, is there 3.2 now?
Yes, this is as of 3/31.
Okay.
We did this in April, so it will, at the next report, you are correct, it'll go up by 1.5 million.
Just want to make sure.
So that was the best use of that bond money, and for us for the city to come into compliance as well.
All right, and on the 21 and 20 funds that are still there, which is a pretty significant amount, is that because the Turkey Foot hasn't happened, the
Diamond
Diamond
interchange.
Interchange hasn't happened?
Yes, ma'am.
So that money is sitting there, we've allocated it, but it hasn't been spent because they haven't
Correct.
moved forward with those projects yet.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I know that we're waiting on the diamond exchange, that's complicated, but the turkey foot we put a pause on. Would that be worthwhile to have a conversation as to how we could potentially reallocate?
Well, yeah, so this gets into a longer conversation, but the justification for getting rid of the turkey foot is that the diamond interchange happens, and since Aldott hasn't said it's going to happen, it's it's dominoes, and so we gotta wait before it can officially be
Understood.
removed.
Yeah, but if and when.
If and when,
We can
yes.
have a conversation about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So basically, all in all, we're in a very good cash position. We do have reserves. The reserves we do have, I feel we're earning as maximizing our potential with interest income and still being very safe with our money. We don't have anything out there beyond 30 days. Everything is within a 30-day. Majority of it is an overnight swap, so it's available to us the next morning. So I think that's good for the city in that regard. Now,
Your T-bills are they don't do overnight swaps on T-bills. I mean,
we have they do overnight what they call treasury repos, which we're lending the money to the banks on an overnight swap, and we're getting like 4.6% on that money on an overnight swap, and it's available. It's liquid every morning if we choose to, if we need it. It's liquid every morning. We got $16 million invested like that, And it's protected money. It's, you say it's protected, but, you know, we're looking at June 1st with the federal government. Not, you know, they don't do something with the debt increase, but that's, they always run up to that midnight hour and make that happen. But yeah, we have 16 in overnight swaps, which is liquid every morning. We've got several that are 30-day treasuries that are out there, and nothing beyond 30 days, just so we can be safe with our money, as safe as we can. And to be quite honest, 30 days is paying as much as 6 months is paying right now. It's paying, short term's paying as much as, you know, 6 months, 9 months terms, so.
What is the Park Tower donation fund? I know with the park donation fund, but what is Park Tower?
Well, it should be the Park Tower Fund. That's a typo on my part, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
It's the Park Tower Fund. There's a cell tower on park property that the lease money is
Back
going to
there.
park.
Got it. So that is what that fund is that money from the lease?
That
going
money from the
Berkeley?
tower
Got
lease,
it.
right.
Okay, got
And
it.
Berkeley, it goes into the park, and it's at Berkeley's discretion, and usually about every, would you say 2 to 3 years, he'll buy a vehicle out of that money? About every 2 or 3 years.
Okay, okay.
It's about $2,000, a little over $2,000 a month, which when it accumulates, he buys a park vehicle.
Okay, nice.
In the Raymond James, that's the third change in name. It used to be the Rainy Day Fund, the Reserve for Economic Uncertainty, and now it's Financial Stabilization, which would need to spell that right, but.
Well, it kind of goes back with the cash reserve. It
Yeah.
can't be called rainy day fund anymore with the
Right.
GASB that changed, but it's really financial stabilization or economic uncertainty is really just,
Yeah.
either one's okay.
Yeah, that's 10 points.
The rainy day fund was where they wouldn't let us be that loose with it and still have it as a restricted, and y'all have it restricted by council, so we had to change the name from just a rainy day fund.
Right.
And that, again, that, like Melody said, that's restricted money that the council has the authority, and if the mayor needed to spend that money for any purpose, he'd have to get council approval to use that money. That's strictly restricted by council, by your own fiscal policy.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the work on this.
Okay. And then I'm gonna let, like I said, I appreciate all the work Melody's done on this to help me out with this too, but then, and I'm gonna let her do the rest of it, because she is much better up to speed on me today.
Intimately familiar with it. Okay, I just want to keep in mind that usually by this time, we do actually have an audit draft, but we did start the audit a little bit later this year than we normally do. It's kind of an experiment to see, and I think that next year we'll probably compromise between them coming in January and coming in as late as they did this year, because we're still working on the audit, which makes me nervous since we're fixing to have to roll budgets out to the department heads. So these are truly for 22 pre-audited. We don't even have a draft, but we hope to have a draft in the next week or two. So definitely know these are not final numbers on the 22 yet, because we don't have a draft to go yet. So if you look at the general fund revenues, you can see we have 4 full years, and then we have where we are at March, which is halfway through this fiscal year. And we did, so you can see, you know, right now we're at 39 million, but that's comparing it to the full year. So if you look at 22 versus 21, we did bring in 63.6 million as opposed to 57.6. But if you look at the next page after that, you'll also see though that expenditures are up as well, which we knew they would, because the pension costs went up when we did the RSA Tier 1 conversion, and we gave a COLA. But the net of those two are actually on the third page. So right now, as we stand unaudited, as far as not final numbers, we stand at quote net income or surplus for 9/30/22 of 194,000. So right under 200,000, and that is after expensing $313,000 in bonuses that we accrued at 9/30 that we paid in November. So if you hadn't have given bonuses, that would be 194 plus 313, roughly. Okay. So if you kind of look at, to me, the chart on the third page is kind of like a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can see that while revenues are trending up, expenses are as well. We had gotten to a point a few years ago where they were almost intersecting going the opposite way, which you don't wanna see with expenditures going up more than revenue. We have been able to turn the tide a little bit, but they're right neck and neck with each other, so we're spending, we fortunately have revenues going up, but we have expenditures going up, so it's just, you gotta, have a watch on that. At some point in time, if your expenditures outpace your revenues, you have to figure out a way to bring more revenue or cut expenses. And on this little chart, I had changed it, but I don't think it got reprinted. This little chart that's got the percentage change from 18 to 22 and then 21 to 22. The top numbers are right, 19.71 and 10.47. But in the expenditures, I found a formula error and I fixed it. But and you see the actual number under the 21 to 22. Revenues percentage change from 1 year, 21, 22 is 10.47. But expenses are up 11, so see, they're just up a little bit more than revenues are up. So they're running neck and neck. While revenues are up 10%, 10.47, expenses are also up 11%. So they're running neck and neck. So that's why we're not seeing huge jumps of net income, because our expenses are rising to keep up with it. If you look at the 18 to 22 change, in those years, revenues up 19.71%, but again, expenses up 21.51. And I'm not saying anything doomsday, I'm just saying that you have to keep a watch on it, because at some point, if your expenditures outpace your revenue growth, you're gonna deplete your fund balance at some point. But of course, we have a healthy fund balance, but it is something, you always ask me what causes to keep me up at night, so watching that trend keeps me up at night. So anyway, so that kind of, I just think that picture is really important to see.
Do we have a fiscal policy in terms of how much we would like to have?
Yes, we do, and that's why every year, like after we get the audit done, we have to give the audited results and come to y'all, and we have to see if we have enough fund balance for the budget, and then we had to move some money to the rainy day fund, economic concern. We have to look at that every year once the audit's finished, because we have to keep a certain amount, until we get a certain percentage of general fund expenditures in the, like last year, we passed the first test, but not the second test, which we didn't have the percentage of this 22-23 budget, because we gave a 5% COLA, so the expenditures went up.
Sure.
We had to move some money from the surplus. So, but that's something council passed, and council has us look at, but we'll have to bring that to you when we nail down that net income when the audit's done,
Sure.
whether we have to move any money over to the cash reserve for economic uncertainty. So, and you can see on this trend, you can see the year that COVID happened, FYE 2020, we only ended it with 56,000 in net income. So you can see the COVID year in that. I will say though that it's been a little while since we've been able to actually come to y'all and ask, can we move capital money over from general fund? We've only been able to do bonus since COVID, but fortunately we have had the ARPA money twice, which has allowed us almost $7 million to do stormwater and some other things that we've been able to do, and we've had, fortunately, the bond refi money that we've had, but, that once we go through that and ARPA and the bond refi, there may be a time again when we need to look at that quarter of the sales tax that goes to capital and see whether we need to change that. At one time, back years ago, it was 50 cents, which you remember they took a quarter, but fortunately, we haven't had to ask y'all to move surplus. There hasn't really been general fund surplus to move to capital, but fortunately, we haven't had to with the ARPA money we've been able to use and the bond refi money. So,
Very timely.
absolutely.
Very timely.
So, on the next page is the sales tax analysis for the general fund. Again, remember, sales tax is really split. The general fund keeps a portion of it. The general fund gives a portion to the Board of Education, and the general fund gives a portion to debt service fund, and then the capital gets a portion. So, when we're talking about, we look at sales tax as a whole, this particular sheet is looking just at the general fund, but you kind of expect them all, general funds trending upward, capital's trending upward, and the Board of Education is trending upward as well. The economic incentives that we give only affect the general fund and capital, because you cannot give economic incentives on the piece that goes to the school. So their percentages will be a little bit different than the other two, because they won't be affected by the sales tax rebates, which sales tax rebates are treated as a reduction in revenue. They're not an expense. So these numbers are net the rebates, if that makes sense. They're not grossed up by the rebates. So for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we are at $14,304,000 just for the general funds piece. And that, if you look at the first 6 months of last year, 21-22, we were at 13.3. So we're up about 7.5% for the first 6 months of last fiscal year. And you can see on the notes, right now, fiscal year '23 is net $822,000, so of incentives. If we did not have incentives, you would have $822,000 more in revenue. But that is reduced by the incentives.
Counselor Jones, I'm sorry, I'm not on the committee. I just had a question.
Yeah.
As we're going through this, Mr. Burgett, do you by chance, would it be appropriate for the extra copies for non-committee members?
And then if you look at 21, 22, again, pre-audited, the general fund piece of sales tax, we were like 27.6 million. And that, tells you how much that we had in incentives. We do have currently three companies that are getting sales tax incentives. We have one getting lodging, a couple getting business license, and one getting property tax. So, anyway,
And one property tax for Brookwood Hospital.
yeah, Brookwood Hospital. So this is the general fund piece, and then if you look on the next page, that kind of plots it out. And you can see kind of where we stand. As far as 22 was a really good, was even better than 21. But we are fortunately moving in a good direction. We're moving upwards, which is what you want to see. And hopefully online sales won't impact that too much, but anyway, so that's sales tax collection for the general fund. Then if you go on the next sheet, we're at property tax. And keep in mind on some of this that property tax, for a city on cash flow wise, sales tax comes in every month. Every month sales tax is not the same because obviously in December people shop. And so January collections are really high from December, and then oddly enough, in August, it's almost like December because everybody's moving back in Sanford and they're buying dorm stuff, and so August is really, so you can't really say sales tax flows the 12th, the 12th, the 12th, but you can kind of look at that for the numbers because we get sales tax every month. Property tax, like business license, is really collected, the bulk of it in December, January, February, so we're really almost done with property tax, real property tax. We'll get some straggler money in later, but, and that's one reason when you look at where we are net income wise in March, this is totally unlike another business because you're gonna look at like, wow, we're $4 million net income, which I'm gonna show you, but that's because the bulk of two of our big revenue items are already in. We're not gonna really get any more. So but expenses are gonna be pretty much continuous. So, it kind of misleads you if you don't look at the fact that, cash flow wise, one of the lowest points of a city, oddly enough, is October, because the new budget, we kind of have a hard time getting departments heads to understand that. Fortunately, Homewood is in a little bit different place with having reserves. But like in October, everybody wants to go spend in capital, buy the new vehicles and all that, but that's really our lowest cash flow point, because we've had to live off property tax and business license that really came in December, January, February. We're living off sales tax, so to speak. So in October, there's some cities that say, hey, even if the budget's passed, you can't go buy anything until we get property tax in December. We're not that way, thank goodness. But when you have to look at the financials, a city's financials are really hard to interpret if you don't understand the way the revenues flow. It's not like a normal business, if that makes sense. So when we look at property tax here, we have actually already exceeded budget, fortunately, which is good because we're really not going to get that much more in. So in the general fund for property tax, through March, we're at 6.6 million. And we've budgeted $6,195,000, so we're actually at 107%. And then last year we were at $6 million. We didn't quite make budget, which is I think why we were a little more conservative this year. We were at 97%. So and we do have one rebate aside of that, which is Brookwood, that you see on there, which was right at $50,000 in the general fund. So
What do you mean by Brookwood?
we still paying them.
Target, you mean?
No, Brookwood has property tax incentives where we gave them a deal in 2010 when they did the psychiatric center and the new women's centers.
the hospital.
We gave them a rebate
I'm sorry.
on
Yeah,
property
okay.
tax, and we
How
still.
long is that? How long does that last?
There's about 10 more years left.
yeah,
It's
a
a long
Yeah.
time, okay.
The good part of it is it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And this rebate was done based on the increase in the building that they built. So we kept the baseline. We got 100% of the baseline, and we only
It's
gave
just
them a
what they
rebate
approved.
on the additional amount that was.
Okay, and that's the only one right now that we have on property tax. And you can look at the graph here, again, the trend is going up. But again, just keep in mind, that's pretty much it. We'll get like a couple of little small amounts, but that revenue now is pretty much done. Lodging tax kind of falls in sales tax. We get that every month, but obviously there's gonna be seasonal variances where you're gonna get more in certain months when people travel more. If you look right now, we do actually have a relatively new incentive that came on the Valley Hotel. We used to not have any incentives. The council raised lodging tax a few years ago. We got skewered during COVID on lodging tax right now. But now if you look, right now at mid-year, the numbers that are presented are net 293,000 roughly of incentives. Last fiscal year 21-22, we paid 522,000 of incentives. So that number for 22 of 4 million would have been $522,000 higher without the incentives.
Considering they're basically single-handedly saving our lodging tax, I'll give them a break.
Can you tell us what percentage of our sales tax is Target, is Walmart and Sam's?
We can only speak in generalities, but we can't talk about that.
Moving on.
That means, don't ask that question.
I will tell you this, nobody asked me the question on the playground, but when we were talking about the sales tax in the general fund and Target, we've been in an incentive with them for, I want to say it's 15 years, or is it 10 million, whichever comes
$10 million.
first. We will be at the cap before the 15 years. We're trying to finalize those numbers to see. It is anticipated that it is close to being paid off, but that will result in additional revenue in the general fund for as long as hopefully the store remains healthy, which we hope it does. But anyway, so we will reach the cap before the year is over, but we're still trying to see exactly.
Before this year,
You
before
think-
23 is over?
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Well,
Hopefully.
And how many years in advance of the 15 is that?
I think we're at like 12.
Yeah,
Okay,
about 3
so
years.
about 3 years early.
Wow.
Well, we'll take that.
That's
Thank
a big
you,
deal.
Sanford students, for buying all of your stuff now.
That's a big deal.
We will have more on that for y'all. We will have more of that nailed down probably during budget year and or in year end. We do not yet have
Right,
the
yeah.
final numbers on when, and we still have other payments making them at least.
Right.
All right,
Mr. Harder, an answer to your question was, when we did our bond disclosure and it was published, Walmart, Sam's, and Target were in our top 10. And we had to publish that for our bond disclosure.
I understand.
I guess we can safely say that we do have somewhat of a, what do you call it? We're heavily percentage of certain taxpayers. Like we have a large
Okay.
percentage, and that's what I was saying.
Walter would like to move along
Okay.
from that.
Well, I didn't give you the numbers, I'm just saying that it's in the bond disclosure. Okay, business license. Business license at mid-year, we've already exceeded budget.
Wow.
The budget was 5,000,003, and we are at 5,295,000.
At half the year?
But again, business
all
license
comes
is
in
pretty much
January.
done,
Okay,
except
so
for
that's pretty much-
delinquents and new businesses.
But that's still, I mean, to have already
That's
surpassed
big.
budget.
And I will give
by a
Bo,
year.
Julie, and Amy, and Robert, and Kelly works on it too, all props, because they really take that serious and really work hard for the city to make sure we don't leave money on the table. But the bulk of all that is in, other than, like I said, new businesses, contractors that come in that hadn't worked in Homewood that need to renew, and also following up on delinquents. We're starting to work delinquents.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that company that works on the out of Homewood stuff working out?
Well, okay, they are still reporting some revenue, but keep in mind that their project was to find people that are not domiciled in Homewood. They're
Yeah,
finding
so
people
out
with
of
delivery,
Homewood.
so it's not a huge dollar amount.
Okay.
But we have gotten some money in. But Bo does, being our senior revenue examiner, he does more of the bulk of collecting places that are domiciled in Homewood, if that makes sense, going knocking on doors and stuff. When you have to put a face to it, as far as a person here with a badge that comes
Sure.
in cars, that has a little more behind it. But they have found some, but they were primarily working on delivery license and that type of thing. And we do have River Tree that audits as well. So, and they do a cross-check sometimes when they find something for another city, they can find that they owe us money as well. But, we do actually have incentives that we have given also on business license, and you can see that, on here.
Okay.
And Robert and I can email you the detail of this. I didn't put it in the packet, but I did print it. To me, this is always helpful. It's the prior year comparison report. It shows where we are in March versus where we were in March last year. So if we told you that right now, at last year, we made about 194,000 net income, and you add back the 331 in bonus. Okay, because see, right now you look at year-to-date, we're at 39 million of revenue, and we're at 34 million of expense. Okay, great, that's net income of 4.6 million. Everybody's like, great, woo, we can go, we're rich, or we whatever. But again, the bulk of your money in two categories is already in, where your expenditures on payroll is happening every month. So if you look, last year at this time, we were at 7.6 million net income. Now we're at 4.6. So expenditures are up greater than revenues are up. If you see that, expenditures are up 5.7 million. Again, we knew that. We gave a 5% cost of living. In no way am I on record saying we shouldn't have given a 5% cost of living. I'm just saying that we knew I'm just saying, it'll come back and say that I was. I'm very thankful, thank you for the cost of living. But it does actually cause your numbers to go up. The pension numbers went up, the health insurance went up.
Everything.
So,
And it
and
stays
the
at
cost
that
of
level.
fuel's gone up, the cost of supply, everything's up. So that's why I say when you give these numbers, knowing that we're a net income of 4.6 million, even to me, as long as I've been doing this, doesn't really tell me the full story, because I gotta look at where we were last year and how that compares, so we know what to expect. And again, when y'all pass the budget, to not finish with a surplus, to actually use about 2 million in carryover fund balance. We hope not to have to use that, but we still have to watch, because expenditures are up, and that's why you can look and see later, if you look and say, okay, why are some of these departments up? You want more information, when you can study, we can send you the full report. But this this report really helps me to see in comparison to where we were last year. So with that, that's all I
Okay.
got. Unless you have any other questions.
And just to recap, most cities do not have a mid-year review, but we have a policy in place for us to kind of review where we are, and we're in good position. So we go above and beyond. We're in a good position. So thank you for that report. Any questions?
Chairman, at the beginning, you said that we were up on everything except one category.
Oh, yeah, what was the one category?
What was the one category?
That was the lodging tax.
Oh, the
Lodging
lodging
tax is
tax.
down,
Yeah.
but our incentive payments are up as well. So if you look at it with the incentive, the lodging tax is actually up, but the collections to the city, because of our rebate, were down from last year.
Okay, just 1 second.
Something else I'd like to point out that I missed, and I apologize. On the cash report, the insurance fund is showing a balance of over $1 million. We don't carry that balance in the insurance fund. It's funded by general fund. That's just a timing issue where we made the payment to travelers. It just didn't clear the bank.
Gotcha.
And it's a timing issue. And we did get a $42,000 refund last week from workers' comp. So in doing the audit, we try to make sure everybody's categorized right, everybody's in the right field, so we can minimize that workers' comp, because it's $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And then when we say everything's up, as far as, we knew the cost of living, we knew expenditures were gonna be up, we knew health insurance went up, we knew pension went up, we know gas is up, but that's another thing, is that the property and casualty workers' comp was up. What the insurance fund really doesn't have a revenue source for that, so it's funded by the general fund as a transfer out, so that's another cause why expenditures are up. And that's what you'll see in general government, because if insurance is up, the general fund has to, there's no money sitting in the insurance fund to pay it. There's proceeds sometimes during the year to pay for repairs, but there's no money for
Funding source.
Yes, it's funded by the general fund. So that went up this year. Well, how much did our premiums go up by? It was a good amount.
Several $100,000.
Nice.
All right. So I'm just looking for a motion to accept the
Yeah,
report.
motion to accept the report.
Second.
Okay, moved by Counselor Smith, second by Counselor Gwaltney. To accept the report. Thanks for all the hard work on
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
appreciate
All in
that.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign, that's 5-0. I wanted to have this conversation so that when we get to the incentive part, you'll be thinking about this, because every incentive affects your budget. 020523, request to declare various city items surplus. So we've got now, we've got the fleet maintenance department that was sent out this afternoon. We've got the library, and then we have one more, don't we?
Yeah, and the Tahoe was it was,
There was two from.
was 2 leaf backs
Yeah,
from
leaf
Fleet.
back and then the
And the
car.
Tahoe was requested by travelers. It got hit and, it was due to the mileage and the airbag being deployed, but we don't have a choice on that. Travelers is declaring a surplus. I mean, we have to declare a surplus for them to take it.
To get the, yeah.
Yeah,
So it was the.
The crazy thing, the car wasn't damaged that bad, it's that all the airbags deployed in it, and that's more than, to replace it's more than the value of the vehicle.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Oh, my God.
So
It
it's
just had
the,
a-
it's the library stuff, the Tahoe,
and
and
two
the
leaf-
2 leaf backs, okay. I would make a motion to declare all of the items, presented as surplus.
Okay, moved by Counselor Smith, I'll take you.
I don't know if I gave you the leaf
Counselor
backs.
Harden
I think
down
I
there,
sent it to
I
you.
don't want you to feel left out, since it's already fussed at you.
Was that Smith and Harden?
Yes.
Yeah, Smith and Harden. They're a law firm.
A really
Any
bad
other
one.
questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign? 5-0, that passes. 060523, bid opening set for June 5th at 4:45 for paving project, so we're on track with that, so we'll carry that over pending the bid opening. And then our last item.
We did get those published in the paper.
080523, request for consideration of economic development incentives located at 195 Oxmoor Road, 536 Cobb Street, Village Creek Development. We've got representatives here, and then if our council president will kind of, would you like to start off with a recap from our side, and then we'll get additional comments?
No, on your name's there.
So we've had a number of conversations with Tom and his team, Trey, and about this. And we've, quite frankly, we haven't done this a whole lot with restaurants. We've done it with 2 that anyone can think of, Pizzeria GM and Bricktop. And so we've tried to sort of use those as a model for what they've asked for or what they're asking for tonight. GM Marcos has a cap of $500,000, 10 years of abatement of half of the city's portion of the sales tax. So 50% of what the city collects for itself,
We just finished that.
not including the schools is always
Bricktop's is
excluded.
And that was paid off, so
Yeah.
just recently.
No, I was talking about Pizzeria GM.
Okay, I was just telling you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Bricktops was essentially same deal with the $300,000 cap. And so, currently, the city retains 3% of the sales tax, 4% goes to school, but 3%. So, what they're about to propose to you is, basically something that sort of follows along the GM Marcos line. They have 2 restaurants as opposed to 1, so if you did 500,000 for each, you'd be at $1 million. So what they're gonna come propose to you is to have an abatement of half of this 3% sales tax, so 1.5% of the sales tax, and for 10 years, with a cap of $1 million for the 2 restaurants combined. In addition, the construction materials also have a lot of sales tax, and hasn't been unusual in the past that we have abated for construction materials. They would put a $400,000 cap on those, but those materials, as materials were purchased for construction, we would rebate the sales tax, so that money would sort of come up front in terms of their project. It's not money that would come to us otherwise, but for this project. But so that would be rebated. And then the last thing that we also included in the Pizzeria GM deal was business license fees, and they have included that with a cap of $100,000. So you've got $1 million of sales tax, $400,000 of construction, and $100,000 of business license for a total upper limit of $1.5 million. Yes, ma'am.
I don't remember us ever doing all of that at one time.
Not for a restaurant. This would be different. The Gianmarco's deal we did, or I'm sorry, the Pizzeria GM deal, we did $500,000 for the sales tax. We did business license without cap, if I remember, 3 years, but no monetary cap, correct? And we did ad valorem on that one as well.
Yeah.
But we did not
Not
do
do
construction.
construction.
Correct. And then brick tops, we just did sales tax.
Sales tax
That was
only.
it.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the only thing involved in that.
And
So
did you say that we're almost to the 300,000 cap?
brick tops, we just.
They've
hit
paid
those
off.
Okay, so it's done.
As of
Well,
just
right
like a
now.
week ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's been, well, good for them also. Good for us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
So anyway, but that's sort of where we came up with in terms of the proposal, was trying to use those models, and working with what they wanted to ask for and need, and what the city is trying to stay consistent with what's the city's done in the past. This is sort of, if those two things merge, this is where they merge. So I'll let them speak to it, but that's.
Thank you for that recap, yeah, because they're obviously, yes, Mike.
I sent you a document about 415 that we've all kind of been working on all day today on the weekend, so. As I understand it, that's a document that everyone's signed off on from the applicant standpoint. And I think it tracks what you've been told by Mr. White.
Okay. And before y'all get up to date, obviously you would want more, we would want less, so I think a lot of work has been done to get to where we are. So I appreciate your patience as we kind of work through this, proposed day and everything, so, the floor is yours, Councilman.
Sure, okay. Well, thank you guys. I'm hopeful that, my name is Tom Walker. I'm the president of Village Creek Development. I want to reiterate the appreciation for you guys sitting down with us and working through this. I know that it happened on a very tight timeline. Our seller at the Econo Lodge is very eager to sell that building, and so we're under a very tight timeline to try to push forward with this. What we have today, and what is what Councilor Wyatt suggested, was that we're probably a little bit under what we told our bank that we were hopeful to be able to achieve, and so our bank has agreed. This portion of this deal is something that it will be a very large part and a requirement of our overall capital stack on our project. The bank is very eager to see what happens here tonight and how we move forward in the future, but exactly what I know Alex lined out is what we're comfortable with. We did, thanks to Mr. Kendrick and Trey, our attorney, work through an agreement and get the language correct that I think that the city's comfortable with and that we're comfortable with as far as the mechanics of how this would operate. Again, very appreciative of the city's consideration of the item, and want to make sure that we really say that we're trying to be fair in how we are approaching this, and don't want to ask for anything that others haven't gotten. Councilor Smith, just to sort of answer your question about sales tax abatement, the way that we've sort of thought about that in our heads is that a large portion of our site budget and our infrastructure budget is dedicated to improving city right-of-way. We're adding 30 spaces, 16 spaces on Oxmoor Road and 14 spaces, I think, on Cobb Street. And we're adding sidewalks, which are currently not in place on Cobb Street as well. And then we're also addressing a stormwater issue that's in the neighborhood, and something that we feel like we're installing all new stormwater management for the entirety of the site. So as far as justifying how we're approaching coming forward with a request for abatement on construction materials, it made sense to us to consider the investment that we're making in the city's right-of-way. So I have been in front of this committee, or in front of this council a lot. I'm sure you guys are sort of tired of seeing me in some regards. I'm happy to answer any questions about our project, show any specific locations about what we're working on, or answer any questions about the agreement that we've put forward. Or I'm happy to run through the project in general again with you all if you think it would be helpful. Do you have a preference?
Well, I mean, my preference, we've already talked through the project, and we believe in the project. I mean, so tonight's discussion really is just talking about the economic development incentives that we can provide you so that you can be successful. I know all costs have gone up. You shared that with us. You know, it is a different landscape now with interest rates and all kinds of things that are happening now. So I think that's why you need assurance that you can get some help from us. on
We
this
absolutely
side.
do. I mean, just to be, just to kind of put it as a point of comparison, I mean, we went out and approached, about a dozen banks on this project, and we had interest from a lot of them. A lot of them really couldn't lend, including banks in Homewood, that really wanted to do the project, really wanted to invest in the community. But because of what their overall leverage positions were, whatever their circumstances were, they weren't able to. But we did come down to terms with a local bank that's trying to establish a presence in Homewood and in Birmingham as a larger market. And it's a floating rate loan for the first portion of the deal. So to think about that is what's been happening, with the interest rates, rising over the last year and a half. It's something that really, really worries us, and it's something that the bank really wants to have, in the capital stack again to help understand what the debt service coverage ratio is, and also to accommodate the rising cost of construction, particularly around the site work in our project. Our site is not a very large site relative to what the site number would be for what we're actually paying. So we're paying a premium for that. And then the other thing to consider is that we're buying an operating business, right? The price that we're paying for the land is not really based off an appraised per square foot value, right? We're paying for an operating business to shut down. We're paying to terminate the operating agreement for the user of that operating business. And that's not really something that, usually translates into a market rate price on land, So we're happy to do it, and we're very excited about it, and we think the neighborhood's excited about it as well, and the city. But those are the things that really attribute to, why the costs of this project are higher than perhaps in other places.
Okay. Yep.
I understand on some of the incentives for capital stack issues, but what does sales tax do for you, the developer? I understand what it does for the restaurant. How does that help your capital stack?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Trey, but I believe the mechanism is that the tenant pays the sales tax, and then the city turns around. If they pay $100 on a monthly basis in sales tax, the city would keep $50 and turn around and write a check for $50 to us.
We do that annually.
On an annual basis.
January 15th
Okay.
on
Okay,
the
I see.
year.
So when we were talking earlier about those incentives, those are the payments that we make out.
Okay, just like Target was the same way, I think,
Yeah.
with Colonial Properties. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
We have to have a public hearing, and we'll have to schedule that, so if you want to do it for a council meeting, the first time we do it is the 12th.
Of June? Okay.
You have to publish it 7 days in advance, so it could get to the next week.
Sure. All right, so this is not an incentive question, but you were talking about how y'all are kind of in an accelerated mode of getting the property purchased. When you say accelerated, like what timeline are you thinking?
June 30th would be the latest we could close.
Okay.
And I promise you, we do not have the ability to push that any further.
Yeah.
They are very eager to sell the project. We're having to, really sort of pending this meeting and some of the feedback that we get tonight, have to make a decision on if we want to extend the purchase and sale agreement for another 45 days from or 43 days from May 17th to June 30th.
Yeah.
And then June 30th,
Would be the
that's
date.
it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I guess the appropriate motion is to move this out to council and set a public hearing for the June the 12th?
Second.
Without recommendation.
Move this out without recommendation, pending that public hearing that we will set for June 12th.
For June 12th.
Yes, June 12th.
You made that, and
Second.
Councilor Allen seconded that, okay.
Just want to say thank you,
Yes.
really, to Walter
Yeah.
and to
Alan.
Council President
And
Wyatt
Mike. And the mayor.
and
Mike.
the mayor and Attorney Kendrick and
Everyone's been
everyone,
very,
just
very-
for working together. I think that this really shows how we're willing to support good projects, but also make sure that we're protecting the city fiscally. So thank you for everyone and their involvement.
I totally agree with that and couldn't agree more. I think we did ask to move this through at an accelerated pace, and it's never easy to do that. I know this isn't the primary, everyone's primary profession, so I understand what it took for you guys time-wise to sacrifice to do that, and I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Pleasure.
Is that
Okay.
5-0?
Been moved, seconded. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. That's 5-0. Going to council for next week.
Well, yes. But
Public
the
hearing.
public hearing won't be until June 4th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, to set.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have,
Yeah, before we close, before we adjourn, I just wanted to give everybody an update on the chiller project, which is thankfully, finally actually gonna happen. Berkeley and I met with representatives from Train and from Craneworks last week, and we are going to be installing the new chiller. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, you were waving. I thought you were like, oh, did something change? And I didn't know. We're gonna be, I was like, please don't tell me that. I was so excited. So we are scheduled to install the new chiller the weekend of actually Juneteenth, because City Hall will be closed on Monday, and that will just make everything easier. But we're gonna do a lot, we're gonna have to do a lot of public outreach, because to install the chiller, we are going to have a 500-ton crane in the bottom parking lot for 4 days. So, actually 3 days. So we're gonna have to shut the parking lot, the lower parking lot down starting on Thursday night, so that they can bring the 500-ton crane in on Friday morning. We're gonna have some police officers help us with some traffic flow situations. They're gonna hopefully come down here on the 29th and back the crane in. There has to be a separate crane to put the 500-ton crane together, so there's actually 2 cranes. But the smaller crane will be then trucked out of here. Yeah, it's gonna be a big deal.
supposed to be chilling here tonight. Stressing me out.
Yeah, it is gonna be stressful, a little bit. And then, after they get the crane, in, and there can't be any cars down there, so we're gonna have to make sure that everybody moves their cars. And then we're gonna have to block off the upper parking lot from, crosswalk to crosswalk, because there can't be any, pedestrian traffic underneath the crane while they are booming and lifting and moving, because the chiller itself weighs over, 50 tons. So, all that. But it is exciting, and it's going to be fantastic, and it's going to really affect our power bills in this building. It is going to be a little bit of an inconvenience over that weekend. Luckily, we have made that a holiday weekend, so our employees will not be here on Monday, and that will give them the time to get the chiller up, get it up and running, make sure everything is regulated before people come back into the building. So, and thankfully, JJ thought about Rosewood Hall, because Berkeley and I had not, and we were like, wow, that's gonna be really cool. Somebody's having a wedding reception and there's no air conditioning in June. So that, luckily, they did not have it booked. So we'll be talking to y'all more about getting the word out to people as we draw closer to that time. But just know that Juneteenth weekend, new chiller will be installed.
Thank you for that report, and they've been working. I mean, this is not just the work didn't start from the chiller. I mean, they've been preparing for all
Yes,
this.
yeah, I mean, it is going to be a logistical exercise. I mean, I was like, I may just come watch it just to see what it looks like, because I don't know what a 500-ton crane being put together looks like in the back of our parking lot.
If I had to bet from Train's perspective, the easy part is putting it in. The
Oh.
tough part was getting that piece of equipment.
It-
It is
we
so
have-
hard
Yes,
to get.
it has. We
that
have bumped, and we have
equipment.
bumped, and we have bumped, and
Months
when
and months.
Duncan finally texted and said it is actually coming,
It's
we could not have been happier. So so it is. It's been a long
The timing's
time.
gonna be good on that.
I think so. I think so too. I think so. I think summertime is a little less crazy around here. So, but yeah, we'll be asking for some help getting all that word out.
Okay, thank you for your work on that.
Sure.
Any other questions? For that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
I do, I know, that she
We
doesn't.
should have taken a picture with Tom and Bryson.
I
We had a class of 20
know.
reunion.
That's right.
Hey, Brendan.
That's so neat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Planning and Development, May 15. Counselor Andrus?
Here.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Here.
Counselor Wolverton?
Here.
Counselor Sims? Left hand, Counselor Nels? Here, so Sims left, right?
Yes, you did good.
So you saw a quorum, you got 4.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, everybody, I will begin with a motion to dismiss the reading and approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 20th. So moved. Okay, Councilman Mills? March 20th, yeah.
I double checked it to make sure, because I didn't sound right.
Thank you, I know, right? Okay, so I have a motion from Councilor Nelms and a second from Councilor Gwaltney. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes 4-0. Okay, we have no old business, so new business 070523, request for a resolution in favor of the Red Mountain Cut Foundation and Jefferson County Commission TAP grant request, brought to us by Bryson Stevens and myself. I can't wait for you guys to hear about this. I first heard about this project, I think it was during COVID when you presented to the Jefferson County Coalition. And were you there for that? Was it Vulcan? I know we're all wearing face masks. Yeah. And we're all socially distanced. I know that's how long it's been. But I really appreciate the work that he has done on this project. And then President Wyatt and Cale Smith and I met with him last week. This, just to give you an idea, just to let you know, we are, this is a regional cooperation project, and Mountain Brook has passed a resolution in favor of last week. So Bryson's asking the same of us, and I'm gonna let him introduce the project and answer any questions.
Great, thank y'all for having me today and giving me a little bit of time. Yes.
Just whatever, don't mind for you.
Sure. I'll do it when I'm.
That's fine.
All right. So my name is Bryson Stevens. I am chairman of EBSCO Industries here in Birmingham, and I got involved in this project in 2014, 2015 timeframe when an ex-employee of EBSCO actually commented to a family member that the cut looked pretty bad, as if we were responsible for maintaining it.
We get those comments too.
I'm familiar with that.
But I was pretty quickly, we hooked up with Claude Nielsen, who at the time was working on a project he was calling Gateways. And he was trying to get some money out of Montgomery to clean up major gateways or arteries in and out of the central business district. And so he made a yeoman's effort for about a year or two, and Montgomery was not cooperative, so he didn't get any money, and that kind of died on the vine. And but the idea of the cut, really, this was the first time I had thought about it in any seriousness since I probably was there on a field trip in the late 70s or early 80s, and went out to the Red Mountain Museum and walked on the walkway. And so I started thinking about it, and ultimately decided that I wanted to do something about it. And so my first meeting was with David Faulkner, and I went to school together, and he got Jabbo and Director Cooper and DeJarvis Leonard, and we asked ALDOT, because it is their right-of-way, whether or not if we wanted to do something on the cut to clean it up, to improve it in any way, would they stop us? That was the first question of the day, and they fortunately said, no, we won't stop you. We won't give you any money, we won't help you, but we will not stop you. And that was fine. That was really all I needed to get started. And so in 2018, we signed a planning agreement with Goodwin Mills Kaywood to do a master plan and feasibility study, and really kind of looked at the whole neighborhood surrounding the cut. So Jennifer's correct. My request here today is for a letter of support or a resolution of support in favor of a TAP grant application that will be made by Jefferson County with the support and blessing of the city of Birmingham, because it's their street. But it is also, I think, noted that this street, if improved, and I'll show you some pictures of the improvements, if improved, would be a benefit to the citizens of both Homewood and Mountain Brook. And so that's why she mentioned that I had presented to Mountain Brook, and they are supportive of it because as it stands today, 21st Avenue South or Diaper Row is not really pedestrian friendly. And as a connector, it can be improved, certainly. So I'm going to kind of give you what I call kind of the grand vision, which is long-term. It is an idea, it is one possibility for what we can do in the cut. And then I'll specifically hone in on the 21st Avenue, which is narrowly what the request is, the letter of support, what we're asking for today. So I'm going to kind of just orient everybody on the space, and then I'll talk about the history of the cut, and then I'll go into what our objectives are as a foundation, and then I'll get to the improvements that we want to make. So I'm assuming that everybody in this room knows exactly where
Yes.
the cut is. So if you back out, kind of bird's eye view, 30,000 feet, the cut sits right in the middle of the greater Birmingham area. Our city is bifurcated by Red Mountain from the northeast to the southwest. And as our city grew and the settlements on the south side of the mountain grew, Red Mountain really became a transportation problem. I believe Homewood was incorporated in 1926, Mount Brook in 42, Vestavia in 1950, Hoover in 1967. And in the 50s and 60s, as the neighborhoods south of the mountain were growing and people were commuting to get to businesses in Jones Valley, getting over Red Mountain was a problem. And those commutes had gotten to be quite long. My grandfather lived on Cherokee Road in the 50s, and it would take him 45 minutes to get from Cherokee Road to First Avenue North, where EBSCO's headquarters was. And so the solutions for this transportation problem were several. They looked at tunneling, they looked at doing the cut, ultimately decided to do the cut, but it really sits right in the middle of our city, and I just wanted to share that map with you to illustrate that. This is the Red Rock Trails Master Plan. You can see that the trail systems typically follow the path of least resistance, or the valleys, and the cut sits right in between Red Mountain Park and Ruffner Park on Red Mountain, in between the Jones and Shades Creek corridors. This is a zoomed-in version of that map that illustrates not only the location of where the cut sits, but also the community assets that are really within a stone's throw of the cut. You have the botanical gardens, you have the zoo, you have downtown Homewood, English Village, Highland Avenue, 5 Points South, UAB, and next slide, please. And if you were to walk to or from the cut, it's a 10 to 15 minute walk to any of those community assets. But you would not walk there today because it's inaccessible, and many of the feeder roads, i.e. 21st Avenue South, are not pedestrian friendly. So, background. It was built in the 60s for $22 million, which today would probably be over $1 billion. But amazingly, they built it for just over $20 million. It opened in 1970 to handle about 32,000 cars per day. And the Red Mountain Museum, which was located on the north slope, very near where today's St. Rose Academy is, on 22nd Street South, the Red Mountain Museum opened in 1977. And as part of the museum, there was a walkway on the eastern side. The first bench is what I call it. First bench of the eastern side. You can see it there, and it dead-ended, but it was a self-guided walkway where you could go out and read educational exhibits and learn about Earth's history, the geology, learn about Birmingham's history, Alabama's history. You could see the Big Red Seam, and then of course there was the museum there on the north slope. And you can toggle through these fairly quickly, just some images. These were all on 35 millimeter slides in storage on in the attic of the McWane Center, and we digitized them. You can hold there. And in 1987, the National Park Service gave it a national natural landmark designation for its geological significance. And so its heyday was really 70s, 80s, and by the early 90s, there was a push from the Arrington administration to move the Science Museum to Jones Valley, to downtown. And that was, I think, motivated, I'm sure, for several reasons. One, to improve activity in downtown, but also because the site on the northern slope of Red Mountain was not ideal. There were parking limitations, the buildings had gotten old, they were small, and it was either time for a refresh at that site on the north slope, or let's move it. And the decision was made to move it, and the McWane Center is fantastic, and I think frankly it was probably the right decision to make. Unfortunately, the trade-off was we got the McWane Center, which was great, a positive. The downside is that that location and the cut itself lost its on-site manager. There were no longer employees going to work there. There was no one cutting the grass. There was no one cleaning up the graffiti. There was no one picking up the trash. And over the last 25, 30 years, Mother Nature has done her thing, and not throwing stones at AlDOT, but AlDOT has done their thing. And AlDOT's, they were very clear with me, and I'm sure y'all have had interactions with AlDOT. AlDOT's mission is to build roads and bridges, and maintaining their right-of-ways and cleaning. Not all the time. I'm trying to be diplomatic up here. But anyway, they're not, into landscaping their right-of-ways and taking care of their right-of-ways and going out and picking up trash on a regular basis, which is why we have things like Adopt a Mile, and we have good citizens that get out and do these cleanups. Because why it's important for us to put a good our best face forward to have, an attractive neighborhood and community. And if somebody doesn't get out there and pick it up every once in a while, then it's going to get trashy. That's all there is to it. So that's what happened, and it happened for 25 years. So the objectives of our foundation, why did we really get into this? First, we wanted to redevelop the space. Somebody said to me that, any town can have an aquarium. Huntsville can have an aquarium, Chattanooga can have an aquarium, Memphis can have an aquarium, but those towns cannot have the Red Mountain Cut. That is a special place that is unique to Birmingham, and so we want to invest in it, and you can kind of toggle through these animations fairly quickly. Invest in it for economic development. Why? Because quality of life matters. When somebody graduates from UAB's medical school or undergrad school and they're deciding what to do next in life, we want them to choose or Sanford or Birmingham Southern or Miles. They have a choice to make as to where they go get a job, where they want to live, where they want to build a life, a career, and a family. And so having quality outdoor recreation assets, such as our parks and our trail systems, are important to building quality of life in our overall community for economic development. A connection, a bridge between downtown and over the mountain. It would connect the Red Rock Trail systems on both sides of Red Mountain to bring back the educational component that was frankly lost when the Red Mountain Museum and the walkway closed. There are a lot of fossils and artifacts that are in storage at the McWane Center, but it's not the same as being there, being out in that space and being face to face with that rock and experiencing it, in real time. And then an aesthetic, we wanted to design something that spoke to the future of our city. Sustainability, and you can toggle. We're thinking about this for the long term. Whatever we build, we want to take care of. We're raising money privately. What I am telling donors is that 20 cents on every dollar that you give us is going into an endowment. And that endowment will help us open on day one with money in the bank so that we are financially stable and we can take care of what we build. And then we're going to design it for low maintenance. I'm telling people to think of this as a Rotary Trail on steroids. This is not going to have a museum, there's not going to be any buildings, there's not going to be any full-time employees, there will be a volunteer Friends of the Cut group, but We're trying to keep our maintenance and overhead low, and then we have a 501c3, which the plan or the idea, like I said, this is an idea, is for us to manage it for the long term. So the improvements, the first improvement we made was cleaning off the vegetation before the World Games. And so as some of you may know, Claude Nielsen, who I mentioned earlier, who I connected with like 8 years ago, he quickly, pre-World Games, got a group together and raised some money from UAB, Jefferson County, and I think a few other sources. And they cleaned up street level, made some street level improvements of some major arteries in and around downtown. And that was great work. And in fact, I think they have a 3-year contract to kind of continue that maintenance of picking up trash and cutting the grass in and around a number of the major intersections and arteries. We took care of the vertical walls. The vertical walls, as I mentioned, are in ALDOT right-of-way. They are inside the highway fencing. And so we contracted with Gray's Tree Service, and not only did they take 25 years of vegetation, but there was a group of homeless that had built a camp up on the second bench, and they removed 2 or 3 full truckloads of trash because that group was basically living there at night, and then they would walk down into downtown and get food and come back up, and then, you know, there's no facilities there, right? So it just, it got really trashy. So that was our first improvement. To give you some sense of perspective, if you don't mind going back, that I love pointing this out, that little dot there on the bottom right photograph is one of the Gray's Tree Service workers rappelling off the side with a chainsaw in his hand. And so that just puts it into perspective, why it costs $500,000? I mean, it's a big space. And if you don't go out there and you haven't really kind of experienced it, sometimes we forget it because we drive by and it takes about 19 seconds to drive by it, right? But it is a big space, and there were 20 and 30-year-old full-size trees that they had to remove. The ongoing, now that all of that work has been done, if we continue, the ongoing maintenance would be about $60,000 a year. So it was a big one-time cleanup that, if it's followed up on, will be less expensive to maintain it. Okay. So the improvements, the 2 I'll mention, the one I'm here about tonight is the 21st Avenue or Diaper Row. That's kind of what I call phase 1 or our project, our first project. The cut trail, I'll talk about that. That's through the cut. That's a bigger project. It's going to take a long time and a lot more money. And then the yellow line is really just to highlight the coming improvements on 18th Street, which are coming down to this intersection where the Walgreens and the Board of Education and Vulcan Park are. And so I'm completely biased, but I think the improvements on Diaper Row, if they could be married up with the improvements that are being made on 18th Street and what y'all are doing coming up from downtown Homewood, we have an opportunity to really improve that intersection. I know y'all have already got the right turn lane coming off Valley. That's huge. But, I mean, clearly we need crosswalks, and that whole intersection needs a little attention. 21st Avenue South. We can go to the next one. Yeah, I'm assuming all of you are familiar with it. It's kind of a wide street. People generally drive over the speed limit. There's no sidewalk. There's no bike lane. Not very pedestrian friendly. However, I didn't really fully appreciate this until I pulled out the Google map. And there's 350 single-family homes within 500 feet of Diaper Row. And this is really, it's a Birmingham neighborhood, but it's a neighborhood. And those folks are definitely directly paying the price for 21st Avenue not being pedestrian friendly. But then also citizens of Homewood and Mountain Brook are paying a price because it's not a good connector to get from one to the other. If, you know, somebody living near English Village wanted to ride a bicycle, not even a half a mile, to come to a restaurant in downtown Homewood, you're taking your life into your own hands by going down 21st Avenue South. So it's not very welcoming. And so if I'm sitting there making a decision, do I walk to Homewood or do I ride a bike to Homewood? Maybe I'll just go eat in English Village. Or maybe I'll walk down to Mount Brook Village instead, because there's a nice sidewalk going all the way down by the zoo. So, I mean, people think about that. And right now, diaper row is friction. If you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist, it's friction. Next one. So what we want to do is we want to put in a new sidewalk. We want to put in a bike lane. We want to put in some crosswalks. There's not one crosswalk on Diaper Road today. And we basically want to make it safer and more approachable so that people can use it. These are preliminary sketches done by GMC, and so this may change. We've talked about maybe moving the bike lane to the south side, so when you look at these, don't think this is permanent. If we win our TAP grant, we'll have probably a year to work on design and get input from the neighborhood and really fine tune it, but this is just conceptual. All right, so the next one, obviously the area underneath Highway 280, and then the next one, and that just, again, another look of what we want to do. So that's really, I mean, I could stop right there and just say, you know, I would hope that the city of Homewood would support Jefferson County's TAP grant application for improvement on this street. And the reason that Birmingham is not applying is because they have an active TAP. And if you've got an active TAP, you can't apply for another one. We went to Jefferson County. We said, do you guys have a TAP application? They said no. We said, are y'all gonna make one? They said no. We don't really do a whole lot of sidewalks. We said, would you apply with us in the city of Birmingham? And they said yes. And so our foundation is going to put up the 20% match. And then we'll see if we win. And then if we win, we'll decide what we want to try to build. And then we'll work on paying for it if the TAP doesn't cover it all, which it probably won't. But that is, that's the plan on 21st Avenue South. And so I'll pause for a second, and then I can go to the cut trail.
Any questions, John?
Is there any desire to go back to the idea of classrooms coming up there and going along the cut and looking at the geology like I used to see back probably when you were a kid? Did you see that coming? Is there some desire to put something there that, you know, I know St. Rose has kind of taken over a lot of that. Is there any chance of creating some kind of opportunity for education along the cut?
Yes, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. Near St. Rose, where the Red Mountain Museum was Birmingham city land. And when they knocked the Red Mountain Museum down in 2003, they sold a little chunk of it to St. Rose, but they still own about 1/4 of an acre right there. And, but yes, is the answer to your question.
Any other questions about the 21st Avenue project? So that's his specific ask tonight, which is our support of that. And as you know, as I look at it, I used to live on 21st Avenue South. But as a runner, you know, I know the Birmingham Track Club goes down that road a lot. It is a very wide road with a lot of fast traffic, and there's tons of room to do something for pedestrians and for cyclists. And it ties directly into Homewood. I mean, it ties directly into Homewood, and it ties directly into Mountain Brook. And I just think it's a great project, and I'm just really so pleased that somebody's taking it on, and that the county sees value in being a part of it as well. But to get an idea of what the whole project looks like, would you show us?
Yes.
How it ties into.
So the cut trail. So this is the grand vision for what to do through the cut itself. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to build a pedestrian connector, a trail, ADA accessible, that would connect from 21st Avenue South on the south side, which is top right, to 22nd Street South, which is St. Rose is right down here on the north side, and incorporate a plaza that would have overlooks taking in Jones Valley and downtown Birmingham. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of walk us along the cut trail from south to north. And so on the south side, we would have a gate entrance. The gate is kind of a nod to the mine entrances, which you can see out at Red Mountain Park. And so you would have an entry, And then you would almost immediately go on to columns. One of the biggest challenges of this design was getting it to be ADA accessible, because it had to be a 5-degree slope or less. And you've got the topography of the mountain, which is like this, but you got to make a trail like that. So when it's not on grade in the middle of the cut, it's actually on column. And so this trail would be tucked up against the hillside on columns, and you can kind of see the shadow and the curve there. But it would be about 3 sidewalks wide, 14 foot wide, and you would rise along the trail up towards the first bench of the eastern wall of the cut, which is where the concrete sidewalk used to be, or it actually still is today. And we would bring back the educational component, so you could give yourself a self-guided tour. Like I said, we don't plan to have employees. I've been working with a couple of educators on trying to pull a team together to come up with a curriculum. I think there's a lot of opportunities for using technology. Everybody's got a smartphone. You could have QR codes with videos. There's a lot you could do on the education side. And there's a lot of stories to tell, not only Earth's history, not only our city's founding, but civic development. I mean, what was the impact that this had on the growth of Birmingham over the last 50 years? I think there's just a lot of educational opportunity here. And so as you continue north, you would come off grade and go back on column as you kind of made the sweeping turn around to the plaza, and we would want to light it up at night. I mentioned earlier that when the highway was opened in 1970, it was designed to handle 32,000 cars today. Today, it handles 94,000 cars a day, so triple what it was originally designed for. The only punch through Red Mountain that handles a greater vehicle traffic count is I-65, which is at about 120,000 cars a day. So at 95,000 cars a day, this is a very visible space, not only for our citizens, but for visitors. And in fact, when Ron Kitchens was the head of the BBA, I visited with him and talked to him about this. And he said, you know, it's interesting, we had a site selection team in here about a month ago, and they went to lunch in Homewood. They drove through the cut from the BBA offices in downtown into Homewood, had lunch, and drove back. And one of the questions they asked when they got back is who takes care of that space? Because at the time, it looked like crap, right? It was completely overgrown. There was, you know, clothes and trash hanging from the fences, and so that was his question: who takes care of that? Ron didn't have a good answer at that time. But anyway, this is a very central, high-traffic, visible space. So the opportunity to do something impactful that really sends a positive message for us and others about our city, I think, is one that should not be overlooked. So as it comes around on the north side, the way it's currently designed or envisioned today is it comes off column and it goes onto a cable suspended system, so that kind of sweeping turn is suspended above the plaza. And this is just another view. Of course, the plaza is a place to gather. You could have a class out there. You could do a lot of things. The gate on the north side would connect with existing sidewalk infrastructure on 22nd Street, which takes you right down to the bottom of the hill, and you're on Highland Avenue, and you're at 5 Points South, and you're at where the old, was it a Western or a Pig, and the Hot Fish Club, which is about to be completely redone by Daniel. And so you are right there. And just another view of the city, and next one, you know, kind of sunsets. And then I think that's it. But I'll answer any questions y'all have. That is the grand vision. I know what's going through your mind. He's crazy and it's going to cost way too much. And you're right, I am crazy and it's going to cost way too much. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to do big things sometimes. So we'll see. This big vision will require a federal grant, a significant federal grant, and that will take years to accomplish. But we're starting small, and if we can get a sidewalk on Diaper Road, then we'll be going, you know? But that's it, yeah. I'll answer any questions y'all might have.
I appreciate, I know you put money in, we appreciate
I don't know how many people actually went up there. I actually have been around long enough to have been in a class that walked up there and got to do a field trip. So it's
I wanted to say
kind of
one
bizarre.
quick thing.
Sure.
You remember that when we saw the map of the sidewalks and things, the walkability within the metro area
Yes.
50 years ago?
Yes.
Used to be so much better, and then it got so worse, and this got completely neglected and passed over. So I'm so glad that we're coming full circle where we're realizing spaces that we can utilize, and 20 Diaper Road is perfect for that.
And speaking to that directly, I can't tell you how many of these, RPC things that I've gone to where they put the map out and said, what do we need, and every time I'm like 21st Avenue South, we need 21st Avenue South, English Village to Homewood, Vulcan
And
to
green
this
spaces,
project.
yeah, green
Yes.
spaces have disappeared, and now we're bringing them back, and, use areas like this. I mean, this is an exciting, ambitious
Yeah.
project, and I am disappointed that AlDOT doesn't see things like this that are gems that could be really developed.
Well, and to quote Bryson, this really anchors this, the other side of the mountain, you've got Vulcan, and this really anchors that. This makes a loop, right, between First Avenue South, you've got a loop, so you can, go from South Side, up and over the new improvements on 18th Street, or 22nd, or 20th, or whatever it is, yeah, and then go by Vulcan, and then go back down to 21st. As you all know, I'm trying to build a bridge just a few miles from there, doing the
Just
same
get
thing.
Jennifer to
the
do it.
same- Yeah, exactly, so, my tiny little project, versus this, it's just,
Well, you're my inspiration, you're tenacious.
Well, it's only taken me
Thank you.
11 years so far. Still not there yet. But, anyway, any other questions? Okay.
I'd make a motion. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna clarify, so Jefferson County did apply for a TAP grant, or you guys have?
It's due at the end of this month, that's why
It's
we need
due
a
at the end of
motion.
And that's for the sidewalk
That's for
part?
the 21st Avenue part, that's right,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
that's correct.
But
Yep.
we already have TAP grant that we're.
This is in
That's-
Birmingham, so we're in the city of Homewood.
Correct,
So
yeah.
Birmingham they already have one that is, coming up 20th Street.
Right.
Bryson has partnered with the county, and so we are just passing a resolution in support of.
Sure, okay,
And that, that is due at the end of this month,
Sure.
which is why we need to move on it.
sure, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So I have a motion from Counselor Waltney.
Second.
Second from Counselor Wolverton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes 4-0. And so Bryson, that'll be in
Thank y'all so much.
the full council next week. And so then, if it passes, we will have that available with the mayor's signature
That night.
Next
that
week.
night.
That night. He usually signs everything after the meeting.
Mr. King,
That's fine, yeah.
he needs this by the end of the month, because he's applying
By the
for.
31st.
So if we
or the
pass it next
application's
week,
going in on the
you'll sign it next week, it'll be ready to go.
Yeah, he
Okay.
signs it that night.
All right,
I
so
don't
we'll
wanna
see.
take that.
Thank you.
You don't have to come
Take
next week
those
unless
out
you
of
want
here.
to.
Well, that's not,
Presentation.
that's not
But,
confidential.
Okay.
Only sales tax,
I'm
only
always
transparent
nervous.
information.
I'll look at my calendar.
You know, things like
Friday.
Walmart information.
That
It's at
is.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
But I think everybody but Nick was here.
Talking about Africa.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.